Hello. Uh, this is my exit interview. So I've been watching some of the exit interviews from the Kings on the season as a whole and kind of the conclusion of it. And I wanted to make my thoughts, my video on the conclusion of the season, maybe a little recap and just kind of my thoughts going forward because I think all Kings fans can agree that this off season into the next year is one of the most important that this team has had in a long time because the team's been bad. They've been rebuilding. They've done a great job with that, with building a great prospect pool. But now it's time to get into action. And can the team do it is the question. Will they do it? That's what, we're going to hopefully find out. But I wanted to make this video as kind of I'm going to call it a vodcast where I just kind of talk about the team as a whole, what I think happened during the season. And I'm going to make a couple more videos like this. So, subscribe to the channel, stick around because I have a lot of other stuff I want to dive more in depth. But this is going to kind of be a general overview and, answering some questions that I think a lot of Kings fans have from my point of view. So, to start out with, just the season as a whole, I would say I was disappointed. You know, at the beginning of the year, I think there was some buzz within this team that we could be the fourth seed in the West. You look at the standings, there's not that many great teams. I think the Blues underperformed this year and the Wild overperformed, but only losing out to the Coyotes, and then one of those two teams, there was a chance. There was room for this team to really take hold of that fourth seed and make the playoffs and do something with the season. And for a time, they were. And it all just stopped. I mean, the team crashed. Kind of the beginning of the second half of the season, all that just went away. And part of me thinks that it's kind of just the fact that early in the year, a lot of teams took the Kings for granted. If you look at the starting goalies that the Kings faced in the first half of the year, a lot of backups. A lot of the teams thought that it was going to be an easy series and they could kind of maybe not give 100% effort and still pull out a win or two. And I think that the Kings caught teams off guard. But once the race for the playoffs started to heat up, and unfortunately for the West, it was every team was pretty much in it except for the Ducks. Teams realized, okay, well now we have to really try against this team, and that's when they started to beat us, and the team started to look worse and worse, and the power play started to fail, and it ended up being, like I said, in my opinion, a pretty disappointing year just based on how well the team started. There was just that outline of, yes, this is what the goal was, this is what the progression should look like, and then it just regressed during the season and it got worse and worse. And now when you look at the year, it's hard to really say that the team got much better from last season, which should have been easy. I mean, last year they were terrible, and this year I don't know how much they improved on. I do think they improved on certain aspects, but I don't know if they're improving fast enough because the thing with the NHL is you got 31 teams, now there's going to be 32. Every team is also improving. There's no baseline that you just have to get past and then you're fine. Every team is striving to make the playoffs to get better. And so you have to be doing that faster than the rest of the league. And with the youth that the Kings have, I don't know if they're doing that. And that kind of raises my first point that I really want to talk about, which is why. Why is this team not achieving what they could achieve? When you listen to, post game interviews or these exit interviews, something you'll hear a lot is a lack of belief, that this team had a lack of belief. And It upsets me to hear that a lot of times because when that gets talked about, it gets put solely on the players. Now, I understand they're making millions of dollars. They're the people out there playing the game. I mean, there has to be a lot of onus on them to, believe in the system, believe in the team, and perform their best. But at the same time, I feel like the exact job of an NHL head coach is to make your team believe, to give your team that confidence, whether that's because you're doing well in practice or you're implementing strategies that are working and the team sees that and they can kind of latch onto that and use that to build confidence during the games. But that just seems like that's the coach's job. And that's where I think a lot of fans are a little confused or upset, or unsure is McLellan a good coach? Is he the right coach for this team? And honestly, I don't know. And I don't think anyone knows the answer. There was recently a poll a couple days ago where Kings fans got to vote on should McLellan finish out his 5-year contract, and the majority says that next year is the year. If we don't do well next year, he's gone, and that's where I fall into. But part of me thinks that maybe waiting a year is not working fast enough. Like I said, this team hasn't improved throughout the last 3 years that much, and I don't know. It feels like we haven't had good coaching. I think coaching, ever since I was a fan back in 2000, like coaching has always been something that's been a problem. It was Andy Murray, then it was Terry Murray, and then, finally it kind of got fixed with Daryl Sutter, but then he ran his course. And then, we brought in Willie Desjardins, we brought in, whoever, and it's just John Stevens. And I just think this team has really lacked a very good coach that this team can identify with and build an identity around since the early Daryl Sutter days. And we saw what happened. The Kings, they were on the ups in 2012 when he was hired, but they weren't a Stanley Cup champion team. They weren't a potential dynasty team with going to the Western Finals 3 in a row. That wasn't the roster that we had. And yes, they had trades, they brought in really good players, but they did that because the identity that they could build, and they had a plan that all revolved around Daryl Sutter. And I just don't think that this team has that right now. I mean, when you think of Todd McLellan, what's the identity of this team? What's the system? Well, it's the 1-3-1 trap that works to an extent, but doesn't, we're still losing games because of defense. I think defense is our biggest problem still. And that's about it. I mean, the power play was going well for a little bit, but then it just completely fell apart. And it's tough. It's tough to kind of, it's tough to believe in Todd McLellan. And that's hard because I'm just a fan and I can't believe in him. So what are the players supposed to do? And so I think all this talk about a lack of belief, it really falls on the coaching staff, I feel like. And like I said, I think it is premature to make any changes right now, and it's not going to happen. But this next year is going to be the year that you need to do something, because with all this young talent that's going to come up, you have to have an identity for them to be able to just fit into and come up, and you understand what's going on because the coaching staff has laid out the plan, the system, everyone else is buying in. And right now that's not happening. And it's not good for young guys who do come up, because, you have a team that Tom McLellan has said, with his own words, they play like a bunch of youth soccer players. And, yes, the team, the players have to, be accountable for themselves. But at the end of the day, coaching is one of the most important aspects of any sport. And, when you have a good coach, you hear guys talk about how they're going to, run through a brick wall for them. And I don't get the feeling that anybody on the team would do that for Todd McLellan. Um, Obviously, I don't have inside information. I'm not in the locker room, but when you watch the team, you can see the lack of belief, and I don't think that the players have a lack of belief. I don't think they don't believe that they could win when Cal Peterson's in net or with the six defensemen that they're putting out. I think the lack of belief comes with the, the coaches. So that's my take on that. We'll see what happens. Like I said, next year is the big year. If there's no improvements, you have to fire McLellan. I don't know, which coaches you really go for. It's very tough in hockey to find a really strong coach. Um, and a lot of times it's just kind of fit. Do they fit in with the team? And that's how it works out. And we'll have to see what happens because it's been tough to watch this team after the post Daryl Sutter era because it just feels like I think the organization as a whole has a good plan in place, but when you watch the games, it just looks like a team that's not very good, and they're not doing anything to try and get better and win. Um, but that's going to be my the end to that topic, I guess. Looking at the season as a whole, I guess we can go over pros and cons. First pro is going to be the youth movement. So I'm going to bring up the stats for the AHL because there's a lot of prospects here that are, going to be a big part of this team or need to be a big part of this team. Arthur Kaliev, of course, played one NHL game, got a goal, played in the AHL. I think he's ready. I think he's an NHL player. He's just that goal scorer's, sniper kind of guy who he looks weird when he skates. He's not the fastest. He's not the most skilled, but when the puck's on his stick, he puts it in every time. And that's something that this team lacks very hard. And, having that addition would be huge. And so I think he's a guy who next year, it's going to be a tough training camp, and we'll see what kind of moves the Kings make. But he's a guy who I think's ready. Akil Thomas is a guy who I don't know where he fits in. I think that's kind of one of the cons of this season right now is there's a lot of players that just haven't carved out their spot on the team, and it makes projecting for the future really tough. I'll give an example of Athanasiou. So Athanasiou, if we bring up the stats, actually had a pretty good year. One of the top guys in points and goals. But I've been very critical of Athanasiou all year long. I don't think that Athanasiou is the type of player that the Kings need right now. This team, like I mentioned, they need an identity. They need guys to figure out where they fit in, how they're going to play, what their role is. And Athanasiou, to me, is a luxury player. He's a guy who, when he went to Edmonton, that's the kind of move that is best for Athanasiou. Be that third line complementary goal scorer on a good team. This team's not a good team, and Athanasiou was asked to be put in spots where he needed to be a primary scorer, and it never worked out. It never happened. Offensively, he has skills. Obviously, he has the speed, but I don't know if he uses it enough and in the right circumstances. When you compare him to a guy like Austin Wagner, both have blazing speed. Athanasiou has the finish, and that puts him over Austin Wagner in terms of skill and, kind of roster placement. But one of the things that I think he could learn from Austin Wagner is how to use his speed effectively, because Austin Wagner, there's times where he'll go every game with getting a breakaway chance. Now, he scores maybe 1 in 10 of them, but he's getting breakaways. And that's because he's using his speed at the right times. Athanasiou didn't really get any breakaways this year. A lot of his goals were kind of sniper shots, which is a good thing. It's something that this team needs more of. But, I don't know if he uses his speed that he has effectively. And he's definitely not using it on the defensive end as well. So think to me that's a big thing because the top, top six, top nine roster spots are very limited, and I don't think that there's room for him, especially when we have so many young guys that need to be put on a more than a fourth line role. You can't just stick a guy like Rasmus Kupari on the fourth line and expect him to develop into what he can develop. You need to give him proper playing time and you know a role that he can relax into and not feel like he's only getting 30 seconds, to make one little impact. And if he doesn't, he's going to be sent down to the minors. That's not how development works. And this team, they're in a weird position where they need to get better. They need to be a contender, but they also have so many young guys who they need to develop. And obviously, you put them in the AHL, that's where you want them to develop a lot. But there's still a big difference between the AHL and the NHL. And so it's how do you balance that, bringing a young guy up to develop him at the NHL level while also staying competitive and fielding a proper NHL team? It's something that's really hard. It's something that I've thought about a lot. You hear a lot of talk about, the team needs a top six winger, a top four D man, and I agree. But then it just kind of fuels the, okay, where's Turcotte going to go? Is he going to go be a fourth line center? Is he going to be a third line winger when he comes up? It's hard to place, and I don't envy Rob Blake and those guys, but I think it's something that they have to figure out, and whether it means you do part ways with some prospects to kind of clear up the space, then maybe that's what you have to do. But hopefully you're making the right call, because at the moment, I think the trades and the moves that Blake has done has been good. One instance is Lias Anderson. I was a huge fan of the trade when it happened. I was actually shocked that the Kings got him. I thought Lias was kind of a done case in the NHL, which is unfortunate because he's been one of my favorite players since before he got drafted. I've been a very, very big Lias Anderson fan. I was annoyed with how he was used in New York, and then we traded for him, and I was really excited. And then I got very scared because I felt like the Kings were treating him like New York did, and he's one of those players that he just needs to be in the right role. He's not a guy who you can just put on the fourth line and he's going to excel. He needs trust. He needs to be put out there in multiple situations where he can show you that he is responsible defensively. He has a lot of skill. He plays with grit. He plays with an edge. You saw him stick up for Velardi late in the season. That's something that you want from a guy who is a high draft pick and has a pretty high ceiling like Lias Anderson does. And so that trade ended up, I think, being amazing. I mean, I thought it was amazing when it happened, a second round pick for Lias Anderson, but the way that he came up late in the season, he really shined, and he really showed just the type of player he is. He's that Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades, competitive leadership guy, and I'm really excited about him going forward. And hopefully, if there are more moves done in the future, it's going to be moves like that, because you can look at a couple other moves that Rob Blake's done where they hit. For instance, Samuel Fagemo, he's a prospect that I think isn't getting enough love from Kings fans. I have pretty high hopes for him as well. And, he was a guy who was picked because they traded up in the draft. Same with Brock Faber. Brock Faber's, he went from kind of the other national development team D-man to a really good player. And, you saw how well he played in the NCAA tournament. I think one more year in college, and he's going to be coming up to the NHL, very similar to Mikey Anderson. So I trust Rob Blake. I trust Rob Blake in the front office a lot more than some other Kings fans, definitely a lot more than the coaching staff. But like I said, it's going to be a very important year. When I think about the cons of the season, the power play big con. It's something that gets talked about a lot. And I think a lot of fans, not a lot, but some fans that are kind of the vocal minority, don't really understand the power play and what works and what doesn't. I see a lot of talk about how the entries. Why do they do the Kempe drop back pass entries? They do it because it works. Like that's the best part of the power play. That's the reason why the first power play unit actually has goals and the second power play unit never scored, is because they can actually get the puck in the zone pretty much every time. Kempe's been very good this year at doing it, better than last year. Last year, I think he made some poor passes on the entry. This year, he was making the right passes. Honestly, I would like to see him just kind of take it to the net more. I think teams now have scouted that he's going to pass it off to one of the wings. So once or twice, just kind of change it up, pull a McDavid, pull a McKinnon, and just take it to the house. He did that a little bit this year, and it worked. And I don't know, that's something I want to see more. But the problem with the power play really comes with once it's in the zone and once they set up, because early in the year they had Kopitar, Doughty, and Kempe all shooting the puck from all 3 points in the umbrella, and it was working. Teams didn't know what to do. They didn't know where the shot was going to come from. It was creating open lanes. It was letting the guys in front of the net screen the goalie. After, I don't know, 25 games or so, it just turned into a hot potato game with the three of them, just passing it back and forth on the blue line. And then the other team would pressure and they would just pass it to the other guy. Then the team would pressure him. He would pass it to the next guy. And they just go back and forth. And then finally, one of them would decide, wait, I have to shoot it. They shoot it straight into the shin pads of the penalty killer. And I don't know why. I don't know how the mindset and the mentality of that power play changed so drastically from kind of a shoot first, get the puck to the open man and fire it, to we have to make the perfect pass to get the perfect goal. But it just killed the power play. And so I don't know how you fix that, because that's a coaching issue. That's a lack of belief issue. But I don't know. Maybe I want to see them kind of break up the power play units next year. I think Kempe, he plays on that top unit because he gets the puck in every time. But there was a couple games where he was on the second unit and he was kind of the power play quarterback, like what Kopi does most of the time. And I think that's a great spot for Kempe. I think his passing and playmaking is very underrated. Obviously, he has the speed. He's a good shooter, but I would like to see him be the quarterback of a power play of that second unit, to give the team more than just, it felt like at the end of the year, it just felt like if you got a power play, it was maybe a 55-second power play, because they would win the face-off, they would pass it around for 55 seconds, shoot it, it would get cleared. Then the second unit comes in and they just can't get the puck in the zone, and that's your whole 2 minutes. So something has to be changed there. Obviously, different personnel is going to help that. But that was a very big negative, because there was a point where the power play and the penalty kill were both top 10 in the league, and that was when the Kings were in a playoff spot. And then the penalty kill, fortunately, stayed very high. The power play didn't. The penalty kill was definitely a huge plus for this team, because it shows that they can defend well. They break down a lot in the D zone, and that's what I wanted to talk about too, with kind of talking about McLellan's 1-3-1, is that the system works to an extent. I think they do a good job of stopping entries, but once teams get in the zone on the Kings 5-on-5, every time they just break down. They cannot clear the puck at all. It becomes a minute and a half shift, and then eventually it's a little tic-tac goal that goes right through the crease. Nobody's defending, and Cal Peterson or Jonathan Quick gets just left out to dry. And on the penalty kill, that's not the case. And I think it's partly to do with the personnel. You have guys who are defensively responsible. You have Kopi, AI, Kempe Moore, Jad, and Elias Anderson at the end of the year. Blake Lazat as well when he was playing. So, it's the personnel. But I would like for them to somehow like put that penalty kill mindset when you're in the D zone to 5-on-5 and be better at not letting the other team score and just dominate down low. Because if you can do it when you're down a man, when you're at even strength, they shouldn't look better than when they have the extra attacker. But that's how the year went, and it's something that has to get fixed. Like I said, I think it's a personnel issue. You have forwards on the team that aren't very good defensively. I mean, I mentioned Athanasiu, um, Dustin Brown. He's good defensively, but and obviously the injury that he was playing with really hampered him. But just the speed and the effort that he was unable to give, it made him a liability. And you know, then down the lineup as well, you got guys like Wagner, who I think defensively he did get better this year, and I've been kind of a Wagner supporter for for a while now because I think he does bring enough to the team to not get criticized as much as does. He brings an energy, he brings a little bit of grit, and obviously insane speed that fortunately doesn't lead to many goals, but it is kind of a game breaker in a way. But yeah, I mean the defense has to get better um, as a 5-man unit. I think at the beginning of the year the defensive core, the 6D man, was shaky. But really, once McDermott stopped being featured, I think that 6-man group was really good. I don't think that much of the defensive issues were on the defense themselves. I think it was just a breakdown in a zone, which usually happens with forwards not understanding how to cover, and that's kind of what led to a lot of the failures in the second half of the year, at least. So that's going to kind of wrap up this episode, the first, post season vodcast. I will have more coming up pretty soon. So, like I said, stay tuned for that. Things to look forward to for Kings fans: the World Championships. I mean, the Kings have a ton of guys that are going to be in the World Championships. I'm going to be watching, and it's hopefully going to give a lot of guys some uh, really good experience, because when you look at the rosters, a guy like Matt Roy or Trevor Moore. Matt Roy never represented Team USA. Trevor Moore as well. He hasn't represented Team USA, but Matt Roy, I think he's the best defender on the team. Like, he's going to get definitely top 4, but I would assume top 2 minutes on that team, which is it's a pretty awesome experience for him. I think he's the type of guy who learn from that and like build from that. And then same with Trevor Moore. I think he really came on in the second half of the season, really proved to stand out from, I think, a big group of players that kind of were question marks of where do they fit? Are they going to be here in the future? So him getting a chance to play for the U.S., that's awesome. Cal Peterson, I believe he'll be the starting goalie. Obviously it's biased, but I do think he's the best goalie of the group, and I think he's out of the 3 goalies, he is the best or most established starter. So that'll be awesome for Team USA. And then Gabe Velardi, I believe, is going to be a big role on Team Canada. Obviously, Velardi's representing Canada in the past; he has that experience, but I think it'll be just nice for him, a change of scenery. He definitely looks like the type of player who, I don't want to say that he relies on the perfect line mates or the perfect situation, but he definitely, there's a big noticeable difference in his play when he's playing with players that he fits well with and players that he doesn't fit well with. And you saw that late in the year when he was up with Alexei Follow and Elias Anderson, how his game kind of transformed, and it looked like last year when he was playing with Martin Furt. So we'll see how he plays there. And then Sean Walker getting a chance to play for Team Canada, that's awesome as well. So It's gonna be cool. You know, Kempe I think is gonna play for Sweden. I wouldn't be. I haven't seen the Swedish roster, but I would say like a guy like Bjornfoot could actually be called up for that. I think he could make that team, and that would be big for him. He played a pretty big role in the World Juniors. Um, and then I guess not Kings related, but Matthew Beniers is going to be playing for Team USA, which I think is pretty cool because he was the second center for the World Juniors in December. And when you look at the roster, like he might be a 1 or 2 seed for Team USA at the World Championships. Obviously, the rosters aren't anywhere near the quality that they usually are, which even then isn't the best quality, at least for the North American teams, but just a cool little thing for him. He's a guy who, the Kings really don't need another center, but man, it's going to be tough to pass up on him in the draft. But speaking of the draft, I am going to make closer to the draft a draft preview video on where I think the Kings should go with their pick. Obviously, we don't know exactly where the pick is going to be, but it is a lottery pick, so we have a good chance of moving up. Probably not as good as what happened last year, but we'll see what happens. And yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up the video. If you watched it and you enjoyed it, please leave a like. If you didn't enjoy it or have any suggestions, leave a comment and stay tuned because I got a couple other things that I want to talk about. Potential trades. Jack Eichel is obviously the biggest speculation. He wants out, and not many teams can take on his cap hit. The Kings are one of them. So maybe make a video on that, and I will see you guys later. And have a good rest of the week and summer and off season.